Derita Ratcliffe joining us. She is Deputy Athletics Director at the University of Arkansas. She has had a long and distinguished career in college athletics. She's also the Senior Women's Administrator for Razorback Athletics, and she joins us right here on Halftime. Derita, it's been a while since I saw you. I guess the last time I saw you was at the SEC Women's Basketball Tournament, and we were celebrating, and we were happy, and we were looking forward.
Indeed.
We certainly were. Boy, it seems like a long time ago since then, doesn't it?
It does. Phil, I'm going to start off by correcting you because you hit on one of my pet peeves.
Shoot.
You said Senior Women's Administrator, and it is Senior Woman Administrator because it is a descriptor of the person who has the designation.
Understood. And there it is, right there on your bio, too, Senior Woman Administrator. And that is that's an important distinction to make, so thank you for doing that.
No problem.
It's been a very interesting time, not the last 12 weeks, obviously, last few days, definitely, but, I want to get your perspective on what has happened in these last 5 days, because I know throughout your life, you might have been fighting against some of the very things that we are trying to fight against in these last 5 days. You might have been fighting against some of that your entire life. What have these last few days felt like for you as you watch what's been going on?
It's been a myriad of emotions and reactions, Phil, to be quite honest. At 53, this has been my whole life. It was my parents' whole life. But the last week or so, it initially was, to capture it in a nutshell, here we go again. And then it has started to morph into a little bit of relief that other people seem to be starting to understand. But even with that, a little pain of, but why did it take you so long to understand?
Sure. I think so you do feel like maybe ears are a little more open right now, that hardened stances might be softening a little bit. Are you getting that sense?
I'm probably not quite that hopeful. I'm hopeful that some of the less than hardened stances are softening. I am hopeful that the people who may have felt these were exceptions are starting to see that for many of us, it is the rule. And there is some hopefulness in that for sure. The folks who don't want to hear, see, or believe, I don't know that they've been moved in the last week. But I think folks who had some compassion, but again, thought that these were exceptions, that this was 28 people or 128 people or 1,028 people, now have a greater sense that it is many more people than they knew and people that they are connected to. I think that has been some of what, at least I've seen locally, move folks is, wow, it is somebody I know. It's not somebody on the news. Mm-hmm. It's somebody I know.
Yeah, and it brings it all home to when it comes to somebody that they know. That's for sure. That when you saw the protest in the town square on Tuesday in Fayetteville, and there was another protest in Fort Smith, I understand, on Sunday that went very well, in Little Rock yesterday. When you're seeing protests like in Fayetteville on Tuesday, what does that make you think about where we're living right now, locally? Because the message is out, and it seemed like I just was very proud of our community from Tuesday night.
Yeah, I was there Tuesday night. I had planned to be in Bentonville on Monday, but got a message via email from an organization that it had been postponed, and was very disheartened when I then got home from work and saw that, in fact, people were there. I had planned to attend both. I was encouraged at the event here in Fayetteville, the number of students, young people, I'm going to say, I probably should say young people because they may not have all been students, and the diversity of the crowd that was there. My fiance is older, and he talked about how things felt at a different juncture in our history, in the 60s and early 70s, and what that crowd looked like relative to what he had been used to seeing. So some hopefulness in what we saw in terms of the diversity of the crowd, the age of the crowd, and that maybe that is a signal of the possibilities for our future.
You know, and I think one thing that's important is my question is really how does protest and the message behind it eventually turn into action and the change that the message is trying to grow into an outcome of actual change? You know, that's something that I'm struggling with. We're trying to provide open conversation on this show. You know, that goes so far. And I wonder what else I can do aside from being an open ear to provide conversation. How does protest turn into, real advocacy for change?
I think it turns into real advocacy for change in a number of ways. One, there's the poem that talks about, someone came for my Muslim brother and I said nothing, and goes on. And when they came for me, there was no one to speak for me. I think change comes when people across the spectrum use their voice to speak up for good and against evil. I think change comes when people get to a point that their regular, everyday way of being is too uncomfortable to continue. I mean, that's just human nature. We often don't make changes until it becomes so uncomfortable that we can't keep doing what we've done. I think that is the role of protest, to bring to light whatever injustice you are speaking of at the moment, and continuing to keep that foremost and in the face of people until change is inevitable because the discomfort is unbearable. I think we have to continue to urge anyone with privilege, and privilege is not just a racial thing, it is also an economic thing. Mm-hmm. And those of us who have privilege in whatever arena we have it in, to use that to get better. I shared with a few folks recently in the last couple of days in a conversation that over the last 7 or 8 years in particular, I have found myself at times stopping when I see a group of African Americans stopped by the police, and waiting to see that is going to wrap up safely. There have been times that I haven't been able to because it wasn't literally safe traffic-wise for me to stop, and I say a prayer for those folks. But I shared in a conversation with some Caucasian coworkers yesterday. One thing you can do is stop and stand witness and make sure that they are okay, that they leave that traffic stop alive. We need people to stand witness and help us.
I wonder how the conversation continues with the student athletes that you aid on a day-to-day basis through their lives and their education and their athletics. I know that athletic administrators at universities, I believe that you're not just about the performance on the field or on the court. You're about the entire person. And for me, this is all about the entire person. So how does this conversation continue in the prism of college sports and the student athletes that you're responsible for?
I think a lot of it has to be on some individual levels, helping those young people frame their frustration into words that other people can hear. And unfortunately, that it just isn't for the 18 to 23, 24-year-olds that are student athletes, but helping to clarify what one wants in reaction to one's pain and anger. Because on the other side of the pain and anger have to be answers and actions that suit your pain. And so, in my mind, some of our work is helping our student athletes interpret and clarify what it is that their pain needs in terms of a healing. And that's going to be different from one young person to the next. And so I think we have to be careful that we don't create programs or reactions to them to deliver to them as if they all need the exact same thing.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, one size does not fit all. You're right about that. Derita, I want to switch gears real quick just before we wrap the interview up here, because I know that you're also a major part of the team that's trying to prepare facilities and everything for bringing the student athletes back for the voluntary workouts next week. Where are you guys in the preparations? What's this been like? Because I'm sure I wonder if this is the kind of thing that you ever thought you'd have to battle as a college sports administrator.
Well, I mean, obviously it's unprecedented for us all. What we have been doing is literally, iteration after iteration of our plans, sharing them with multiple people so that we have all kinds of input, that we're thinking critically about what we're doing, how we're going to do things, and how we're going to communicate in real time when our plans need altering. So it has been 8 weeks now, 8 weeks or so of have we thought of all that we can think of right now, and giving ourselves the grace to know that there will be something that we will have to react to quickly because information, knowledge about this virus is ever changing. How we should and shouldn't react is ever changing. And so I think one of the things that is of benefit to college athletics in response to the COVID pandemic is that we are used to moving quickly. We are used to adjusting in game, if you will. And I think those lessons that we have all learned over the course of our careers, however long they may be, will benefit us as we move forward and welcome our student athletes back to campuses across the country, is that we are used to, staying on our toes and being ready to move. Yeah.
You guys got to be nimble on your feet all the time, right? So this is just a little more of the same, I guess. Derita, I really appreciate you joining us and your thoughts and your openness to discuss something that can be such a hot button issue. I'm very appreciative of that and your work at the University of Arkansas with the students. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You got it. That's Derita Ratcliffe. She is the senior woman administrator for the University of Arkansas Athletic Department.